Hi again. Here we are back to continue talking about JavaScript, and we're going to focus on callbacks for a few minutes. Let's take a look at a callback. So what exactly is a callback? A callback is a function that takes another function as a parameter, and it's the parameter function that is the callback. So let's look at an example here. Typically in JavaScript, when you have an array, you oftentimes want to loop over that array and do something to each element in the array. So I've written the code for that here. I've got an array at the top with some numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I have a for loop that loops over each item of the array. It starts at index 0, and I is, as long as I is less than length of the array, then we'll continue doing the code here, and with each iteration we'll add 1 to I. Okay, so eventually I will be equal to the length of the array, and then the for loop will stop, right? And every time we loop over the array, we're going to log the value from the array to the console. Okay, and you could have done more code here. Well, this is such a common operation that array gives us a for each method, right, that does exactly this, right? The difference though is that for each doesn't know what to do here. So what they do is they allow us to pass in a function, and that function contains the block of code that's going to happen here. And it's this function right here that is the callback. So I bolded it here to make it stand out, but this function down here does exactly the same as this for loop, right? So you call array.forEach, and what will happen is for each item in the array, so that would be the number 1, 2, 3, and 4, the for each method will execute the callback. It'll run the callback and then pass the value here into the callback as the first parameter. So item is going to be 1, and then just like we did the loop here, when it goes back up to the top, item is going to be 2, and then it'll do the code, actually it's going to do the code here, and then it'll go back up, do the loop again, and then item is going to be 3 and 4, right? And then we'll log the item each time. Okay, for each also provides the index. So if you need the number I there, it'll give it to us. So this is the equivalent of I. You don't have to include that one. I'm not using it here, so I can leave that one out. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at another example. So here I've got the same array, and what I've done is I've created a function here that says times 2. It takes in the number n, and then it logs the number n times 2. Okay. And what we can do is we can say for each, or array.forEach, and then you can just pass the times 2 function in. Okay, so and then what's going to happen is it's going to call this function once for each item in the array, and then pass that item into the parameter here. Okay, and then this code will run. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the callback itself. What if we wanted to write our own function that had a callback, right? You could write a function here, and you could have it take a parameter, and I called my parameter callback to make it kind of clear what it is, but this variable expects a function. So if I want to run the code inside that function, I'll have to say the name of the variable, callback, and then follow it with the parentheses. And then if you want, you can also pass a parameter into the callback. So the thrice function just takes a callback as a parameter, and then it executes that callback 3 times, and then passes the number of the execution into the callback as the first parameter. Okay. So you could use the thrice function in a similar way, right? So I could say thrice, and then this is the function I'm passing in, and it doesn't take any parameters here, and that's okay. So this number here would be lost, right, or not used, and then it just logs hello world 3 times. So you can call thrice. You could say, hey, do this 3 times, and it would do it, once, twice, 3 times. And just to be clear, this function, when we call thrice, this function right here is inside callback. right? It's inside here. And so when we say callback parentheses, it's like we're running this function. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, let's try another one. So here we're going to do thrice, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to generate a pixel size based on the number. So the first one should be 1, like I will be 1, because we're taking in I as a parameter, times 12, so it'll be 12. The second one, the 2 right here, would be the value that we got here as a parameter, so 2 times 12 would be 24, and the third one, 3, would be the I, and that would be 12 times I would be 36, okay? So this is similar. Here we're actually making use of the parameter, okay? So here's what I want you to do, okay? Here's your challenge, okay? I want you to write your own for each function, okay? So I'm gonna open up a REPL here, and in this REPL, there's some sample code to get you started. And here I've got some numbers, and then I've got a for each that takes in n, and then console logs it times 10. So if I run the numbers there, you can see it's 110, 325, 70, 680, right? And then this other one takes in the numbers and divides them by 2. What I want you to do is the challenge. So this just shows how for each would work. What I want you to do for your challenge is to create the for every function. So this function, when you call for every, it takes in an array as the first parameter and a callback for the second parameter. So I've called the function twice here the same way I called it up above with for each, right? But what I want you to do is to write the code here so that we loop over each item in the array and call the callback with that item. Okay, so you'll have to call the callback and then pass the value from the array into the function. So these functions right here, this is the callback that we're seeing up here, and n is the value passed into it as a parameter. Okay, so that's your challenge. Give that a try and see if you can solve it, and then we'll go over the answer. So you can stop the video and then try the challenge, right? Spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Okay, so let's get back to the solution. How did you do? Okay, so let's talk about the solution here. So I'm gonna rearrange the window there. So here is our function for every, and we're gonna call it maybe this way. This is the first parameter is an array, and the second parameter is a function, right? So that's our callback. And what we'll do is we'll get the count of the array. So I'll get the length, right? So this is how many items we have to loop. And then I'll say for I equals 0. Let's loop while I is less than the count. We'll add 1 to I with each loop. And then we'll call the callback and we'll pass in one of the items from the array. So we'll pass in the item at the array index I, and then that'll be the value of n here. And then we'll, do something. I guess I should have had console log here, right? Maybe I'll just put that in. There we go, right? Okay. But anyway, so there's your solution, right? So that's not so difficult. Just as a note, we could have put array.length right here. I chose to put the count outside as a tiny optimization since we won't have to look up the length with each loop, right? But that either one works, right? So hopefully that's interesting. Try your solution out, compare it to mine, see what you did. There's a few other ways to do this, and you can compare your work. So if you had some problems, you can compare to what's here, okay? And then we'll continue in the next video.